Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Family Matters with Instructor Mike. I am your host, Instructor Mike, and we are going to dive into this lesson of teaching the fix before the feel why solving problems matters more than naming emotions for young children. Let's go on ahead and dive into it. Here we go. So, these are the contents of what we're going to talk about today. The bold statement, challenging conventional wisdom about emotional literacy in young children and early development. Number two, the developmental science, understanding cognitive development theories from Piaget, Vygotsky, and modern research. Three, practical applications, evidence based strategies for parents and educators to help support healthy child development. And four, the action framework, reframing behavior management and teaching children effective problem solving skills. Let's go. Here we go. Your child doesn't need to name every feeling to become emotionally healthy. What they really need to is to learn how to solve problems. How to solve problems. Alfred Adler said something. He said, nobody's lifestyle is really normal. What you'll learn is normal is a social construct, right? A person's lifestyle simply is what it is until it's presented with a set of problems. And that, the ability to be able to solve it or not solve it, is where you'll see the skill deficiencies show up. And this foundational insight challenges today's parenting culture that prioritizes emotional labeling over practical problem solving skills. Instead of just asking children to identify feelings they may not really even understand, we can teach them how to think, act, and solve problems effectively. Here we go. So let's look at one of my favorite child development researchers, theorist, Jean Piaget, in his sensory motor stage, right? It's the cognitive development theory. The first stage is sensory motor. You have four stages: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and operational. So we're going to talk about the sensory motor stage. That's at birth to 2 years of age. Babies learn through sensory experiences. Now, we're not talking about sense in terms of feelings, like the naming of feelings. We're talking about senses in terms of sight, taste, touch, hearing, and smelling. Sight, taste, touch, hearing, and smelling. Those sensory experiences and motor actions. That's why it's called sensory motor, not complex emotional reflection or abstract thinking. They haven't gotten there yet, right? Discomfort, not emotions. Children feel hunger, cold, wet conditions and respond with crying, wriggling, reaching, not sadness or anxiety. And this is important because when parents interpret or they think, and it's not their fault, it's what you've been taught. It's not your fault, it's what you were taught. And when they project what they think their child is feeling versus the reactions because of what they sense, we tend to have issues, right? This is cause and effect learning. Early responses are about problem solving basic needs, not emotional literacy or feelings identification. In looking at object permanence as a foundation, there are key developmental milestones. And this is a key developmental milestone that involves understanding that objects exist even when unseen. And this is important that we help them see that this is why you can play peekaboo with your child. And when you close your eyes or shield your eyes, so to speak, they tend to think that your eyes are gone. And that's why when you remove your hands from your face and then they see your eyes, they're super excited and they laugh because they have not yet gotten to the point where they cognitively understand. That's why his theory is called cognitive development. They don't cognitively understand that, well, your eyes are still there. You just shielded them by using your fingers or your hands or maybe a blindfold of sorts, right? So, understanding where they are and why they do what they do really matters. Let's dive into it. So, in common parenting culture, here you have a common response pattern. When children cry, adults ask, "How does that make you feel?" instead of identifying actual problems, right? The real issue: 2-year-olds lack vocabulary and may not need emotional processing. They need problem resolution. How do we solve this problem? there's a better approach that is needed. Let's focus on what happened and what can we do rather than emotional identification first. Now let's look at that statement again. Focused on, let's focus on what happened and what can we do to solve the problem rather than emotional identification first. Does it seem to be that in your brain, if you put emotional identification first, doesn't that interrupt a cycle that may not be needed? Sound off in the comments. I'll let you answer that. Let's look at emotional shortcuts. Adults default to feelings questions when they don't know how to teach thinking or problem solving skills. This is very important. Now, don't shame yourself. It's not your fault. It's what you've been taught, and that's why you're trying to learn. And that's what we're here to do, is to teach you what you may not have been taught. So let's look at what the developmental science actually says. Here in the upper left-hand corner, you see Piaget's cognitive development theory. We talked about the four stages: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. So sensory motor is from age range 0 to 2 years of age. And what happens at that stage is coordination of senses with motor responses, sensory curiosity about the world, language used for demands and cataloging, right? Object permanence is developed. It becomes something, not something that they already have. In the pre operational phase, from age range 2 years to 7 years, they have very symbolic thinking, the use of proper syntax and grammar to express concepts. Now, this is, of course, provided that you read to your child, you speak to your child. The Harvard Center for the Developing Child, the serve and return, the language. Language is very, very important, even in utero. You reading to your baby, talking to your baby, narrating things around your baby, narrating your day. The brain hears those things. It is very open to those things. It's at its height of its neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. Here we go. Imagination and intuition are strong, but complex and abstract thoughts are still difficult. Conservation is developed. Let's look at concrete operational from ages 7 to 11 years of age, concepts attached to concrete solutions. Now they get to, this is either this or this is either that. You're either my friend or you're my enemy. This is black or white. It's binary thinking. Time, space, and quantity are understood and can be applied, but not as independent concepts. You know how we say multiple things can be true at the same time? Well, they haven't gotten there yet. It's coming. That's abstract thinking, right? And so we get to formal operational, 11 years of age and older. Okay. Theoretical, hypothetical, and counterfactual thinking, abstract logic and reasoning. It's crazy work to expect a child to use abstract logic and reasoning earlier than that. Now, there are some times that, depending upon the development of that child, how much they've been exposed to things, the learning pedagogy or methodology of their caretakers and the other educators around you, yes, getting ages faster is something that can happen. It can happen, right? But it depends on the environment. And we're going to dive into Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory. That is very, very important. Microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, mesosystem, and then chronosystem. It's important for you to understand these things, okay? So children learn by doing and by problem solving. Their early years focus on concrete experiences. It helps them when they get to that concrete operational stage in the cognitive development theory. The more you help them experience things, and if you don't know how to do it, it's important for you to put them around people who do, right? Emotional reflection comes later in development, right? So don't front load it on the front end. That comes later. We talk about emotional intelligence, and that's important, but what skills do they have or did they get in their early years before emotion became necessary in this problem solving thing that's in front of us? Let's look at our friend Lev Vygotsky, guided learning, growth through guided participation, not emotional processing. Lev Vygotsky, a psychologist, died too early, if that's a thing, right? But he talked about the zone of proximal development. Zone of proximal development. That's a space where, you can't do it yet, but you can do it with a more knowledgeable other, MKO, more knowledgeable other, somebody who is more knowledgeable than the child or the person needing help to help you where you are and helping you with understanding how you learn. That's very important because there are different learning styles for different things, right? There's the parents' learning style and how they teach and how they learn versus the child's learning style, how they teach and how they learn. That's important. So let's look at social interaction. It drives cognitive advancement. And this is Albert Bandura's social learning theory. People learn by seeing. Children learn by seeing. They are great repeaters of what is in front of them in terms of mirroring, right? Let's look at modern research insights on the right hand side. Emotions are learned concepts, not universal. Learned concepts under the theory of constructed emotion by Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett. You heard me talk about this before. Emotions are learned concepts, not universal. Well being tied to competence and autonomy. Competence and autonomy that's doing for yourself, right? Self determination, more important than emotional labeling. Here we go. So acting out is problem solving. Oh my God, how many of you all your children just act out, act out, act out, right? So let's talk about a developmental truth. Children don't start with abstract thinking. We just learned this. They learn through trial and error behavior. The prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain that controls, managing impulse control, it's still developing. So they literally lack the brain wiring to pause and process feelings before acting. So why are you having them name something that it takes time for them to process? Let's teach them how to solve problems, right? Looking at behavior as communication. Pushing means waiting a turn. Screaming indicates overwhelm. Running tests safety boundaries. They're not being bad. They're being developmentally accurate. This is developmentally appropriate behaviors, right? So let's look at manners as an upgrade. Manners are trained expressions that help kids navigate frustration, request turns, and get help without melting down. These are socialized problem solving skills, right? And we're going to have a conversation about respect versus manners because you get parents and people who push respect. You have to respect. You have to respect. The dictionary says different. Isn't that something that the dictionary says different? Oh, we got to get to that. I hope you are enjoying this. Let's go. Here we go. Let's look at the problems with current approaches. 100% emotional focus, but 0% problem solving. That means you're processing feelings 24/7, and then you have minimal practical tools to actually be able to solve the problem. So, what's the current sequence? Name your feeling. Oh, talk about your feeling. Stay in the feeling, possibly solve the problem. What does that do? It creates a dependency on emotional processing. It delays actual problem solving resolution. It teaches fluency in complaints, not solutions. Here's a better sequence, though. Identify the problem. Try a strategy. Reflect on the outcome. Discuss feelings if it's even needed. What does that do? It builds competence and confidence. It develops practical problem solving skills and it creates emotional sovereignty, not dependence. Looking at the end goal, children who know how to think, act, and adjust without defaulting to emotional overwhelm, right? They get emotional intelligence with agency. Oh, that is so important. We have got to talk about agency versus empathy. Okay. The ability to be able to do so that the empathy is transformational, not performative empathy. You're making a person see the shoes and feel the shoes of another person when they can barely fit their own. They can barely walk, but they're supposed to understand your journey. How does that happen? Right? Let's look at the ability to persist past discomfort. We're not saying you're not going to be discomfort, or have a situation where you feel discomfort, right? If you're turning to religion, you hear it all the time. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Yeah, okay, that's a thing, but that doesn't mean the weapons aren't going to be formed. That doesn't mean they aren't going to be used against you, but how do they prosper? Right? The power to choose emotional responses. You have the power to choose whether you want to be sad, whether you want to be happy. Whether you're happy and even want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Why do I have to clap my hands if I'm happy? Why can't I just sit still and be happy? Why do I have to smile and be happy? Why can't I just have a stoic face and I'm still happy on the inside, right? That is a thing. Here we go. Dive into it. Here we go. Let's dive into it. Here we go. So let's get to some practical implementation steps, right? Let's look at solve first, reflect later. Ask what happened? What do you need? How can we fix this? Let feeling follow fixing. Let feeling follow fixing. I encourage you not to force feelings. You may say, well, how do you feel? But why? Why? Is this even necessary? I encourage you to say, you didn't like that, huh? Allow space for exploration without making emotional labeling mandatory. Let's teach tools, not trauma. Let's teach tools. How do we solve this problem, not trauma? Every emotional moment doesn't need analysis. Sometimes it needs a towel, a snack, and a reset. Isn't that something? Here we go. Let's train better behavior, not just processing feelings. So, the truth about behavior is that children don't act out because they're emotionally broken. They act out because they're undertrained in effective problem solving skills and strategies. They're learning about their social world, and so they need to be scaffolded. Those experiences need to be scaffolded. They are little constructivist future adults. Let's teach practical skills, how to share, how to ask for help, how to repair mistakes. Mistakes simply means, by definition, an action or a judgment that is simply misguided or wrong, right? And that just simply means that they just don't know. So let's try different strategies and persist past discomfort effectively. Let's model better communication, show children how to use words. I urge you. Oh my God. I urge you to fall in love with the dictionary and even dictionaries, because you'll get several definitions depending upon which one you use, right? So let's understand dictionary and even context, right? Let's learn how to request taking turns. I do not expect children to know how to share. Oh my God, that gets pushed on children so much. You have to share. Why does a child have to share? Because they're put in an environment that is resource deficient. If you didn't consider, and again, let's breathe. It's not your fault. It's what you were taught. Let's breathe, exhale. It's not your fault. It's what you were taught. But if you were not taught to take into consideration that children are not born to share, yet they are very egocentric, they are about the self, then you might have just gotten one toy with two children, not understanding if they're at the same stage of development, they are going to fight, and the environment could invite fights. I'll say that again. The environment could invite fights. Let's not beat the children up for what they are going to naturally do if the environment encouraged them to struggle over one toy, right? Let's learn to and teach them how to navigate social interactions appropriately and express needs. Express needs. Come on. Let's go. Let's go to practice and refine. Let children rehearse better responses through guided practice, not punishment, for developmental trial and error. They are going to error. Here we go. Let's look at research based strategies for parents. Ask solution focused questions. What happened, instead of how do you feel? What do you need right now for immediate solutions? How can we fix this together for collaborative problem solving? Let's offer vocabulary as options. Some kids feel frustrated when that happens. Do you? Teach emotion as a choice, not a requirement. Let children decide their own emotional responses, right? Here we go. So let's look at the skills. I always like it when it transitions to that. That and the origami slide transition. It's awesome. Here we go. Skills versus feelings approach. Let's look at some developmental outcomes comparisons. So when you're talking about problem solving, emotional regulation, social skills, academic performance, resilience, independence, and confidence, you see there's high bars on a skills first approach versus a feelings first approach, right? Problem solving ranges high. Emotional regulation, yes, you need the feelings, okay? But you see skills and feelings are not too far apart, right? If you look at social skills, you better have those skills. You bet we're not eliminating feelings, but we want to put skills first, right? Academic performance, you better have those skills, right? You can feel what you feel, but you got to solve for X, right? You have to know I before E except after C when sounding like A as a neighbor and way. You got to know those rules, right? Here we go. Let's look at resilience. Oh, we talk about resilience. Oh, here we go. How do you know how much you can handle unless you're given something to hold? Let's say that again. Oh, come on with me. How do you know how much you can handle until you're given something to hold? That is extremely important. Let's look at independence. Look at how high skills first approach is. Come on now. And let's look at confidence. You see it, right? Skills first benefits. Children develop stronger problem solving abilities, independence, and practical life skills for long term success when you do skills first. But we want to look at a balanced approach. Skills provide the foundations. Emotions can be explored when children are developmentally ready. And I tried to combine ready and curious and said readiest. That is awesome. I love when I'm doing it live, right? And these things are teachable moment. Don't make that a word, readiest. Ready and curious. Here we go. You better have fun when you learn this stuff. Here we go. The Oscar worthy child development. Here we go. Children are natural actors. They are not broken or failing. They're rehearsing life scenes with limited direction, fresh scripts, and an audience expecting Broadway results with preschool tools. Come on now. The parents, as directors, provide better stage direction and encouragement instead of shame. The definition of shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So if we back that up, wrong or foolish behavior, foolish just simply means unwise. Look it up in the dictionary. So if a child is unwise or are doing things that are wrong, why would we flood their consciousness with the humiliation or distress that is a painful feeling? You see how I reversed that definition? Why would we do that? Let's try that scene again with softer hands, or say your line with calm words this time. It is amazing when we take a breath, we breathe, and we slow it down. We slow it down and say it with calm words. Oh, it is so wonderful, right? Behavior as performance. Every tantrum, scream, overreaction is a test run asking, does this work? They deserve Academy Awards for trying, not punishment for not knowing the script yet. Oh, how do you feel about this so far? Is this reaching the inner child within you? Let's talk about it. All right, let's continue. Here we go. Practical tools for everyday situations. When children hit or push, right? Instead of saying, why did you do that? Try, when you're mad, use your words like this. Or when you want a toy, just say, can I have a turn next? I love it with these children. So when I have to deal with the children who are struggling with the toys that they are using, it's my turn. It's my turn. I said, you know what? Right now we have one box. Okay. But you can have a turn if you learn manners. So let's talk about it, right? Like manners, what is that? It's a way you behave, a way in which one behaves. So if you'd like to have a turn, say, hey, Charles, can I have a turn with the box? Right. And I even like encouraging them. You can say, no, Charles, I'll find something else to do. Oh, let's add that extra thing in there, right? Giving the child the first right of refusal. Now, sometimes they may say no. Sometimes they may invite you in, but it's a practice. Let's focus on teaching the replacement behavior they need to learn. During emotional outbursts, let's model manners as movement. Let's practice walking away instead of throwing, or let's use our calm voice even when we are upset. Let's show them what to do with our bodies and voices instead of just talking about feelings. We can walk away if we want to, and we have that right. Here we go. So let's look at a research foundation summary, right? Current developmental science supports problem solving approaches over emotional labeling for young children with measurable outcomes across key developmental areas. Let's look at the resource. We have my friend Jean Piaget's cognitive development theory. The key finding is that children learn through action, not reflection, right? Application, hands on problem solving. Dr. Maria Montessori is wonderful for this. What the hand does, the mind remembers. What the hand does, the mind remembers. The age group, birth through 7 years. This is the seeds. I'm going to talk about my seeds, values, and and practice theory of parenting. I can't wait. That's going to be so awesome. Yes, here we go. Let's look at Lev Vygotsky's social learning, right? Social learning. His zone of proximal development theory, growth through guided participation with a more knowledgeable other. And I encourage you to ask yourself, are you that more knowledgeable other? Are you that more knowledgeable other? And it's okay to be honest with yourself because maybe you just don't know, and that's okay. Maybe you just don't know, and that's okay. One of the worst things that you could do is to lie to yourself and say you know, because then the child expects you to know. And then when you try and you fail, you may have been taught to beat up on yourself. What a way to encourage that is to try something you may not know how to do. And it's okay to learn how. But starting from this stage is that knowing that you don't know or may not have the answers, right? Let's look at the application, adult modeling of solutions. The age group, all ages. Do you see that? All ages. Oh, learning never stops, and you can do it. Let's look at the next research source, Barrett's emotion theory. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, one of my favorite. They're all my favorite, right? So if I say one of my favorite, just know I got more than one, right? But Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, her theory of emotions, her theory of emotions, right? We learn these things. Emotions are learned concepts, okay? Emotions are learned concepts. So if they're learned concepts, ask yourself first. Let's start with the self first. Let's address the inner child within you, adult, parent, my student, parent, principal. And I'm going to tell you why I call you a student, parent, principal, because you're a student, you're a lifelong learner, you're a parent, because that's what you are, or maybe a future parent if you want to have children, but you're a principal, right? You're a principal. The principal assumes that role, knows what they don't know, and get other people like or better qualified than that principal to teach the children what they need to learn, right? Here we go. I encourage you not to teach labels unnecessarily, right? Unnecessarily. When a person within seconds or minutes of meeting you, when they are quick to throw out labels, that's how you know they've been front loaded with emotions and labels, and they may not have the skills to be able to find out who this person actually is. Okay. The age group for that, early childhood, early childhood. Let's go to the next one. Self determination theory, well being from competence and autonomy. Autonomy, doing for self, knowing how to do for self. Let's focus on skill buildings and application and the age group, all developmental stages. And let's look at modern neuroscience. Prefrontal cortex is still developing. That prefrontal cortex, if you just fast track to the age group, it's from birth to 25 years. Your prefrontal cortex doesn't really get fully developed until you're at age 25, or for some cases, even beyond that. So, in application, we are going to expect trial and error behavior. I think it is crazy work to expect a child to, we pray to God for those people who are religious. We pray to God for God to grant us grace. We got sayings. Oh, be patient. God isn't finished with me yet. We pray for grace and we ask for God to give us way more grace in trial and error behavior than we give children. Oh, come on. Even in going in the Bible, when the ministers were turning the children away, and that seems to be a habit in the Bible, Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me, for theirs is the kingdom. Jesus took in the children. And I'm not saying if you believe in God, you don't have to, right? Yeah, I have my own thoughts about religion, but I'm just using that as a reference, right? When other people are turning away children, Bring the children here. I have the capacity for them. I have the patience for them, for I understand their development. Psychologist Carl Menninger said, "What is done to children, they will do to society." The African proverb says, "A child not embraced by the village will burn it, feel its warmth." We got to take that into consideration. So let's look at implementation framework for educators. Classroom application principles transform educational environments to prioritize problem solving skills for development over emotional processing, creating competent and confident learners who can navigate challenges effectively. When we look at behavior management, let's ask, what happened and what can we do? Let's teach replacement behaviors for common problems, right? What do we say about Alfred Adler? Nobody's lifestyle is normal. The lifestyle is what it is until problems present themselves. And then that's when the deficits show up. If we look at the etymology of the word problem, it originally is a thing put forward for consideration. So when this thing is put forward before you for consideration, what skills do you have to solve the problem? How do we move you from choice making to decision making? Oh, that's another one we're going to dive into because there's a difference between choice and decisions. Let's practice solutions through role playing and modeling. Let's look at social skills development. Show children how to request, share, and cooperate. Model appropriate responses to frustration. Create opportunities for guided problem solving practice. Let's look at practical tools. Provide concrete strategies children can use immediately. Why do you want to give them stuff? They're always going to, well, they'll get it later on in life. Yeah, that's a thing. But what can they do now? What are some concrete strategies children can use immediately? Consistent practice. One of the things that I hear parents say over and over again, "Don't make me repeat myself." Well, you don't understand the brain. The brain is a wonderful creation, but it is still very much the slave of repetition, 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 repetition. Reinforce. What word did I just say? I bet you can recall it. Why? Because you heard it. It's like, this is the song that doesn't end. And it goes on, my friend. Some people started singing it not knowing what it was. And they'll continue singing it forever just because. My 80s babies, you know what that is. That's the ending theme song to Lamb Chop's Play Along. And it just kept, you just kept, this is the song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is the, and you just kept going. Reinforce problem solving approaches across all interactions and celebrate solutions. Acknowledge successful problem solving over emotional expression. Here we go. So let's look at developmental outcomes over time. The long term developmental benefits are when children are raised with a problem solving first approach. They demonstrate significantly better outcomes in multiple life areas. Research shows that these children develop stronger resilience, independence, and emotional regulation capabilities that persist into adulthood. You see an 85% growth or 85% area where they are in terms of better problem solving skills. Look at the developmental trajectory comparison at age 3. It's about around 60, 62, 63. But then to age 5, you're getting into your 70s. Around age 8, you get into around age 7, you get into about 81, 83. And then you see how it tends to grow all the way up to age 18. Let's start with problem solving first. Problem solving first. Here we go. Key takeaway for parents, and we're getting ready to end, right? Partnership in problem solving. Work with your child as a team. I love this for you to identify problems and develop solutions. If you don't know how, reach out to me. Mike at instructormike.com. Mike at instructormike.com, right? So when you work as a team to identify problems and develop solutions, this builds competence, confidence, and strengthens your relationship while teaching practical life skills. Trust the developmental process. Remember that children are learning through trial and error. Their acting out is often just unskilled problem solving that improves with patient guidance and better tools, not emotional processing. Yeah, that part. Mommy, every time I had a problem, you solved it with me. You didn't tell me how to feel, you showed me how to fix it. That gave me power. And this is the future voice of your child. And this is what we're building, not just emotionally aware children, but emotionally sovereign children. Think, act, and adjust without defaulting to emotional overwhelm. Children who have agency over their responses and confidence in their abilities. Thank you for learning. Together, we can raise children who solve problems, not just name feelings. For more information, go to my website, www.instructormike.com. www.instructormike.com. I hope to see you on the next episode. Take care. And remember, say to yourself, let's end with our affirmations. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. It's not my fault. It's what I was taught. Lastly, it's not my fault. It's what I was taught. Continue to say that until it clicks in your brain to where it reopens and puts fire into the curiosity that you need to want to learn more. I'll see you.